As I started collecting them, I began to get very curious about how I could work out where they were made. To do that, I got in touch with basically whatever older people I could find in Germany who'd been involved in this trade, now in their 80s and 90s, also people at the museums. My degree in German from Oxford became very useful to me because I could speak to them in their own language. And also talking to the collectors, again, generally the older ones, now in their 80s, who had interviewed a lot of the makers and got photographs and been to their homes and so forth. And I began to learn about the characteristics that allow you to work out who the maker of these things are. There are 2 or 3 reasons why we really don't know much about them. Perhaps the most obvious of which is that all the records got ruined in the war. You know, the damage inflicted on Germany, Czechoslovakia was much greater than the physical damage that we suffered in England. And there just aren't records left. Not many of the makers would, however, have kept records anyway. These were craftsmen producing perhaps even a handful of instruments a year at one end of the scale. Over in Czechoslovakia, you did have quite big factories, however, that would have produced some records, but not in the way we obsess over keeping records today. Very little would have been photographed, certainly wouldn't have been painted. And craftsmen educated only to build a musical instrument were not going to be very literary. They're not going to be sitting there writing about their family histories. This is a good example of one of the very idiosyncratic guitars that came out of Markneukirchen in East Germany. And it really makes it clear to you, I think, how the craft of the cello maker shows through on these guitars. This is not a flat top. This is an arched top guitar. These are called generically arch top guitars. And what the maker has done, he's taken a piece of wood, maybe 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 inches thick piece of possibly hundreds of years old spruce, and he has hand carved this beautiful shape down to a point where it's only millimeters thick. He's done the same thing on the back, but also he has inlaid the thing from top to bottom and back to front with mother of pearl. East Germany in the 1940s and 1950s was grim. West Germany was pretty grim. East Germany must have been seriously grim. I travelled in East Germany myself in the 1970s. It was pretty grim then. These people brightened up their lives by making these things decorative. It adds nothing to the tone or the sound of the guitar, but it just makes it very, very special to look at. The name of the maker appears here on this tiny little lozenge into which he's inlaid the initials Osbama, O-S-B-A-M-A. That stands for Oswald Bachmann of Markneukirchen. Not even his whole name on it. And that's pretty typical of the time. That's being quite show-off. I have my suspicions that this guitar may have been made as the masterpiece by Oswald Bachmann, or Heinz Bachmann. Oswald was his father. And this could be one he made for his masterpiece. We know of 3 of more or less this design in the world. And I've seen a catalogue picture of a 4th one. But they're quite loud, they're noisy. They were built to play in a band, so the noise would come through without amplification, and it does it.